Hey guys, welcome back to a quick little video about stitches when you're sewing. There's 4 that I probably use, so that I wanted to make you familiar with those. Of course, there's your basic stitch where you're going to just be sewing 2 pieces of fabric together. And then there is the understitch, stay stitch, and top stitch. So we're just going to kind of go over those real quick. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is a stay stitch. And I'm just going to do it on one of the pieces of fabric, but let's just say that this is a sleeve or a neckline. Anytime you have a curve like that, you have the possibility of really stretching your material when it's cut on a curve. And so people will use what's called a stay stitch. And that is taking one piece of fabric, and we're going to sew on that curve. And you can make it kind of close to the edge. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so once you have a stitch on that curve, that stitch isn't going to let you accidentally stretch it out of shape. So that's just called a stay stitch. And then we're going to use just a regular stitch now, where you sew together 2 pieces of fabric. This is what you see me do, whether it's clothing, crafts, quilts, doesn't matter. When you're attaching 2 pieces of fabric together, it's just stitching them together. Now, when you have stay stitching on one of your fabrics, or both, you do want to make sure that your stitch is running on the outside of that, or it'll show through. Oh, I purposely got really close, hoping it would show through. But anyway, you understand that part. If your stay stitching is on the outside of the stitch that you sew these together, obviously, when you pull this back, you would see that stitch. So that's something just to be aware of. So we've covered stay stitching, keeps you from stretching your fabric out of shape. And regular stitching is just attaching 2 pieces of fabric together. Okay, now what we would want to do, since we're in a curve here, I'm going to go through the curve and just make some snips down toward the edge, so that it, right now, as you can see, when you try to fold it, obviously it's on a curve. So we're just going to make it lay just a little bit better. It is okay if you snip through that stay stitch. You just don't want to snip through the seam that's connecting the 2 pieces. So now whenever you are ready to try to fold that over, see those little slits will let it fold in on itself a little bit better, right? Like that. Okay, so we're going to do what's called an understitch. Now when we are looking at these 2 pieces of fabric together, this we would say would be the outer fabric. This is, we'll say, your sleeve. Just for, or it could even be the front of a blouse if this was your neckline. This is the facing, which would be against your skin, against your body. So an understitch is whenever you would sew this seam against the facing. Now, you could go and iron this if you want. I'm not going to do that. But we will just show you here, though, whenever you try to fold this out. Okay. So you can see what the slits did there for us. It lets it lay a little bit flatter. Still a little puffy, but flatter. And you would iron that, press it down really well. But you can also take it a step further and do that stay stitch where this seam is stitched down against the facing, not against the red, which would be the outer, your shirt or your collar or your sleeve, whatever. We're stitching against this piece that's laying against the skin. Oops. Another way to remember that is the facing is the underside of the garment that lays against your skin, right? So that's the understitch when you sew on that piece of the fabric. So that would, if you didn't want to put a top stitching and you just wanted the color of the blouse, that really helps keep it flat on the inside because it's stitched to this piece here. But you can take it a step further and top stitch, which I do a lot of. So top stitching is where once you have this in place, everything looks the way you want it to look, you're going to sew a stitch on top of the fabric. So that would be showing. So you would just bring your fabric over, or your garment or purse, anything that needs a top stitch. And you decide how you want the top stitch to look. If you want it tiny, like 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the garment, 1/4 of an inch, whatever your top stitching needs to be. And that is the top stitch when it shows on the outside of the fabric. And if you're top stitching, the odds are you wouldn't have to understitch necessarily because you're going to sew now both of these two pieces down. Alright, so in my videos you'll see me sewing and doing crafts. So I thought this was another good video to make in case you just wanted to remember, hey, what's the difference in those stitches? You wouldn't have to look back at another video. This one covers all 4 of the stitches. The regular stitch, the understitch, the stay stitch, the top stitch. Have a great day, guys.